some Jewish name in the 1960s. But that's not what I want. There's an African equivalent. In Africa here, there's no tribal nation that doesn't have its own concept of non-violent communication. In non-violent communication, you have empathy for the person who is on the other side of the fence. It is used in conflict resolution to quickly de-escalate tensions and rule out violence. So if we can inject non-violent communication, our people will find their roots again and find a rhythm.
If I could give if I could jump in, because I heard one of the senators there, how he was explaining not long ago, I think for this particular program, when he said, in this country, if you're not violent about your agitation, nobody listens to you, you don't get heard. So that seems to be unconsciously in our mind. So now you think, for that to happen, for that to change, those who are non-violent about their communication must be listened to.
No, it has to be injected into the national narrative. And to do that, you're going to need the media, you're going to need the cooperation of the government, you're going to need the elders, cultural nations, to all agree that violent rhetoric, hate speech, is not going to help us solve any problems. Now, the moment you do that, you will expose 3/4 of those who do not wish Nigeria well. Because once you engage non-violent communications, emotions are downplayed. Violence is pushed to a corner with non-violent communication. Let me tell you what happened to Nigeria. On the 15th of January in 1966, Nigeria was introduced to its first dose of a violent militaristic operation that saw to bloodshed on a scale Africans were not used to. And afterwards, just like every other African country, according to that program, the military would begin to take over. And what has happened is that there's a militarization, a brutalization of the Nigerian psyche we have not recovered from. And that's why you find that people easily resort to violence all over the whole place. Now,
we've got a question from Markwe. Sorry to jump in. Hope we don't lose your train of thought on the last point.
No.
Markwe?
Well, quite a number of people realize that the foundation, I mean, we've been hearing that the foundation is faulty, and it seems that what they're coming up with, the solutions, your solutions are extremely different, maybe not too different, but largely different from what we've seen so far. What people have been clamoring for is restructuring, and some of them say, go back to the 2014 confab. What are your thoughts on these solutions?
Thank you very much, Moke. Brilliant question. Now, the truth is, I said when we started out that if you're going to construct a building, I trained as an architect, by the way, every building you must lay a foundation, first of all, before you build the superstructure. So the foundation usually is hidden. And when people are clamoring for restructure today, a lot of the emphasis today is on the superstructure. Now, the truth is this. If your foundation can carry a bungalow and your superstructure is intended for a skyscraper, if you amend the superstructure, your nation will still keep having problems and ultimately collapse. So the substructure, she's mentioned the fact that some are, clamoring for a return to that particular document of 2014, but some are talking about the 1963 Constitution, before the unitary one was introduced in 1966 by the military. Some are even talking about going back to the British. So we need to be very careful. If the foundations are repaired properly, everybody will see with greater clarity. And then the superstructure can then be amended easily. And more so when I'd like to mention to you that the majority of people clamoring for some of the solutions that I've mentioned so far fall into the bracket of elders. Now, we need to understand that we have to factor Nigeria not only about the past, but also about the future. And if we're going to do that, we're going to find out that the youths also have ideas that are being formed, but are not yet well articulated. So if you listen to the youths, for instance, you'll find out that they go beyond these clamors that we're talking about officially, but it's just that they have not been able to articulate properly what they are trying to inject into the narrative.
Is it the last point you were going to make? We're talking about the final point.
Yes, I said nonviolent communication is the second thing. Now the third thing is this. To get this nation to work right, you must accept that there are what we call enculturation programs and transculturation programs. And one of the transculturation programs has been used to stunt the growth of the country deliberately. The person who designed Nigeria handed over Nigeria with a bias for the Hausa Fulani, built it into a program. Now, to neutralize that, we must make sure that there's the opportunity to unify the South and neutralize the divide and rule in the South. And after unifying the South, you now can come with a unified South where you remove all ethnic rivalries and all ethnic hatreds. Now that unified bloc from the South is now better able to discuss with the unified blocs, quote, from northern Nigeria.
Using the NVC?
Yes, using the NVC. So we have phase 1 and phase 2. If we don't do it in these phases, the program will scuttle everything all over again. Nothing wrong with northern Nigeria, nothing wrong with southern Nigeria, just that the engineers engineered it that till today foreign nations deal with us as if they're dealing with two nations. It's a program.
That's a very interesting place to anchor. Reverend Laddie Thompson is a consultant in strategic thinking for NOVAD. NOVAD is Non-Violence for African Development. A pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure is mine, sir.
Well, let's go ahead and get another perspective. Mark,